What's up, gamers? Welcome to Game Break, episode 11. I'm one of your hosts, Cole Wise.
I'm one of your hosts, Daniel Escobedo.
Neither developers nor journalists. We're gamers just like you, and this is your video game podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about our spoiler-free thoughts on Uncharted 4. But before that, we're going to be discussing what the Ubisoft CEO was saying about streaming video games and how they could be the future of gaming.
Hopefully.
Not hopefully.
Hopefully.
I'm not crazy about the idea, but we'll get to that when we reach that topic. I wanted to start off today's show, though. I thought it was kind of interesting, the little dreams I've been having lately. So I told you before, at least about the first one that I had, where I found myself working for Rooster Teeth for the day. It's a very realistic dream. There was a weird break in between that involved some ladies, and it wasn't bad, but it was really weird. I'm not going to go into detail. The important part was I got to work for Rooster Teeth for a day, and I was so disappointed when I woke up. And then this was before last week's recording. So then this week I had a dream that I met Kevin Coelho. I think that's his last name, from Kinda Funny. He gave me a demo disc for Kingdom Hearts 3. And he talked about like working together in the future. So I'm really hoping these are those kind of signs that say, keep doing what you're doing. Eventually these kind of things are going to happen.
Maybe.
I mean, at least the Kingdom Hearts 3 disc would be pretty cool. Getting a demo of that.
That'd be pretty nice. It'd be fun to play. If
Yeah.
it ever comes out.
I mean, they started development, so it should only take maybe 10 more years.
Well, did you see that post that Disney is shutting down Disney Infinity? Like they're going to stop.
I did.
Like producing it or whatever. And I think it kind of went into that they're kind of stopping all game development for. I don't know if it's just Disney themselves as being a publisher for stuff or what. So I mean, I didn't get too far into it, and I didn't look. I just kind of looked at it and just wondered. Well, I wonder what that means for Kingdom Hearts. If at some point they just pull the plug and like, we're not going to support it anymore.
I don't think it's so much that as much as they're not going to be game developers anymore, because they said that the risk reward factor in it is not worth it for a company of their stature.
Yeah.
Basically, they pull in so much money on a daily basis that even though the Disney Infinity game is pulling in a lot of money and it's making them money, I mean, you would think $200 million, that's a pretty good amount of money. For Disney, I imagine that's got to be like
pocket
chump change. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for them, they're like, it's just really not worth the headache. And then you don't know if you're going to get anything back for your investment or as much as you invested into it. And so they're pulling out of the games market in that way. As far as their IP goes, like there's still Star Wars games being made.
Yeah. I think there's supposed to be. There's the announcement that they're going to be making like one every year. For the foreseeable future, some Star Wars game will come out every year. So EA said, and that Battlefront 2 has already been planned for next year.
Yeah, I heard about Battlefront 2. I mean, we're basically getting into our worth mentioning segment at this point, but these are worth mentioning. Yeah, I don't know. It's my understanding that basically what they wanted to do was they're pulling out of the market as far as creating games, and they're no longer going to take the risk. They're going to let other corporations, other developers, take the risk for them, and they're just going to pull whatever their share is from it. So I don't think that's going to affect the Kingdom Hearts franchise.
No, I mean, I didn't think so either. I assumed it was just them not wanting to develop any more themselves. But you never know.
This is really my lack of paying attention to game developers when the titles roll up in games, but was Disney Infinity even a part of Kingdom Hearts?
A part of Kingdom Hearts?
Yeah, like did they actually play a part, or was it all just Square?
No.
Yeah, that's
just all Square.
That's what I thought. So I mean, it shouldn't affect it in any way. But Oh well, my sincere apology to anybody out there who actually plays those games and is really hurt by this. It doesn't affect us. We don't have kids, and we're not really one for those games ourselves, so it doesn't affect us. But for anybody who is a big fan, I could see that being fairly devastating news.
Yeah. What can you do?
Well, and especially, our sincerest goes out to the game developers themselves, everybody at that company. I saw several tweets from different developers saying, we're hiring, so they should all find jobs pretty quick, I'd imagine.
I think it's one of the things that sucks about being a game developer is your job is dependent per game that you're making. You're not really you're not considered to be a long-time employee there for anything that you're making. Is just, well, we need you for this game, and then we'll see what happens for the next game. It's kind of like a contract-by-contract basis.
Yeah, it's just the business of the trade.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody takes it personally, but at the same time, if you were maybe high enough up that ladder, then that could be more of a shock at that point. So speaking of video games, though, we saw this newsletter talking about streaming video games in the future, and we don't need to read the entire article, but basically the CEO of Ubisoft has come out basically saying that this is where he sees video games going for the future. He's not the only one who feels that way, because just to quote the last paragraph of this article, it says that his statement seems to echo the statements made by EA's chief competition officer, who, his opinion was also that streaming gaming will be the medium of gaming in the future, and that these two aren't alone in their predictions that the consoles could be dying off in the future. And even Nvidia's CEO suggested that console gaming could be coming to an end. And that paired with like what Shuhei was saying before about the PS5, it's a little bit scary for me to think about, because I like having a physical console.
That's because you're weird, though.
I just can't see myself being the only person who feels that way.
But you just, okay, for you and everyone else, you just like the shape and the idea of it. But in reality, it's no different than just a computer that can play games with a different user interface. If you slap that on a computer, or if you slap it onto a TV that's capable of playing it, it's really no different at all.
See, I've thought about that too, where I think, now that I have a smart TV, before I was really content with, because I actually remember scoffing at smart TVs, going, why do I need a TV with a YouTube app? Got that on my phone. Got that on my PlayStation or my Xbox. Netflix, I already got it on my Xbox, on my PS4. Why do I need to have a Netflix app built into a TV? That sounds stupid. I can get this anywhere else. Now, just pushing a button on my remote, I'm like, this is really nice. It's really convenient. It would be really nice to just be able to basically go anywhere. But actually, with that being said, I feel like streaming could also limit you incredibly. Not being a big PC guy, I could see that if you're on the mindset, well, I have this game, I have game X on the PC. I have a supercomputer, it can run it just fine. Maxed out everything. Then you go over to your buddy's house, he's got a spare computer, so you're thinking, it's all just streaming anyway. I can log into any computer and then just type in my information, and then there's all my games. But then his computer's not equipped to run it. We're still not necessarily in a day and age, and this could be their thinking 10, 20 years from now, so it might not be.
Streaming is streaming. Your computer doesn't need to be able to handle hardly anything to stream.
Right, but I'm thinking, what is going to stream PlayStation games? What's going to stream Xbox games in the future? I imagine
anything.
Yeah, but when you say anything, what exactly does that mean? Are you talking like TVs? Because not everybody has a smart TV at this point.
No, not everyone. Streaming is obviously the next step that I think a lot of console, like Sony and Microsoft, what they're looking at going into. But there's a lot of other things that need to happen before that's even an option. people need to have access to, better technology, with that being either TVs or just the computers that they need, which most people already have a pretty powerful computer that is just sitting in their pocket, which is their phone. I mean, that can stream. If it can stream Netflix, streaming a game is really no different. Just throw a controller up to it, tell it to go, to put the image on the TV, and it's the same exact thing. Just because it's not shaped like a PS4, it's really no different if it's still playing the same games.
I mean, I don't have a lot of technical know-how, but I just feel like there has to be problems with that. Because already, I mean, like, one thing Nintendo gets a lot of kudos for is that even though the Wii Pad is not universally liked, it still manages to stream games perfectly. And so that's Nintendo tech right there that can do it. And yet trying to play on remote play for your PS4, whether or not it's through the computer or whether or not it's through your Vita, that still has some lag. It doesn't look as good. Now, grant you, the Wii doesn't necessarily have the best graphics, so you can maybe kind of dumb it down for that. But it streams perfect, unlike other devices. And right now, I think that's the big problem. Like with PlayStation Now, is they were trying to figure out how do we get it to stream so that way there's no more latency than there is, but like normally between a controller to your console to your
Well,
TV
yeah,
to
I
your
mean
brain.
that is more just data transmission and not as much of the device itself. It's how fast it can send the signal to the other
Right.
device that's receiving it. So yeah, that would have to be something that's figured out in the future, but they're almost there. I mean, give it 10 years, they'll be there. They'll have it figured out.
I think of where the console space is right now, and I think of what that would change in it, and it just seems like you would be in such a different world for gaming at that point, and I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to really think of what to say about this, just because at the end of the day, I mean, it's like what you're saying. I like to have a dedicated box, but I also used to like having physical media, and now with a big enough hard drive in my PS4, I'm at the point where I'm actually really disappointed when I have any physical discs. I mean, the discs that I have, I still like having them for the same reasons I had them before, which was just something nice on my shelf, or steel cases that look pristine. But it's like, well, now I got to get up and change the disc. I got to do this and that, and then carrying your console around now, especially as an adult, just seems kind of silly. I mean, doing it this morning, even bringing my PS4 over here, just felt like this is just kind of weird to do now that I'm grown. But I don't know. I mean, streaming sounds nice, but it doesn't sound great to me. They're gonna have to like really convince me or put me in a corner where I have no choice.
I think this just comes with understanding the potential of what it could do. And I mean, once you see that, then it just becomes a no-brainer. If they can do it and if they pull it off and if it can work seamlessly, then yeah, it's definitely the next step. Because I mean, if you see that, the PS4 is running right now and it's got the image just on the TV, would it matter if I took the PS4 and I put it behind the TV and you couldn't see it anymore? Would you all of a sudden feel like you were being robbed of the experience of playing the PS4?
Well, and don't get me wrong. I've thought about this argument. In fact, I was probably thinking about it just a few weeks ago even, because it's been very recently, where I've thought, what if all I had to do was no different than now when I go to YouTube on my smart TV, or I bring up Hulu or Netflix. Those are just apps. So what happens if I just hit an app and then there's my PlayStation screen? Like, what difference does that really make? And I think to myself, it doesn't. Because it really, really doesn't make a difference to me. But I guess I just had this leery feeling that it could just come with these problems that I haven't thought of yet, or maybe nobody else has thought of, that could raise issues with people. I mean, I don't think it's as common as it seems to be. I think you just get a vocal minority nowadays. But you still have people complaining that their bandwidth at home isn't fast enough to download games, and so they still want physical media.
So streaming obviously can't become an option until the internet just becomes good everywhere. Right now, internet is good in most places, but there are plenty of places where people can only get okay internet. And if that's the case, then streaming is not an option.
Yeah.
But part of that also comes with the internet providers having to be forced to step backwards and not overcharge for the services, because we're in a point where they're charging people way too much money for stuff that they're it's not costing them any more money to give you the higher package. It's just they're charging you more for it because it's a higher package.
Well, that's no different than Apple charging double for an extra 50 gigs of data in your phone. It's like it does nothing for them to just tweak something. And
yeah, so it's all tiny little adjustments on their end, but in your end, you know, on paper, you get so much more.
right.
But I mean, I don't remember what provider it was. If it was AT&T or Sprint or someone. Anyway, some carrier was talking about how within the next year, maybe or so, that they're going to be introducing 5G now into cell towers, and cell phones will start being able to get 5G, which they're saying 5G speeds will be about the 100 megabit download speed.
That would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, and that's like really awesome. And that if that is available to pretty much everyone, because I mean, cell towers it's everywhere. I mean, there's obviously places you can't reach it, but if you can't get a cell signal somewhere, then you generally probably not going to be able to get internet there either, because you're in a rural area that just no one provides.
Well, but that's not entirely true either, because there's a lot of companies like, I believe Wave Broadband is one, that they run through a regular cable like you would get for your your TV services. So you don't necessarily have to have like any good signals there. It just works. How it works, I don't know. Again, not a tech guy, but I don't know. Again, it's one of those, it's hard sells for me, because there is something that comes with buying a new console that gives me a lot of joy. And when they unveil a new one and I'm thinking, like, okay, look at that design, and it's just, I just think it's something that gamers are so accustomed to having and enjoy having. I'm not going to argue with it to the point where I would say that if it comes that I'm going to just quit gaming, it's not going to upset me that much, but it's going to be really interesting. I guess that's...
Streaming comes with benefits too, though. Like when you think about it, a console, when they drop, just like when they dropped the PS4 and the Xbox One, they drop it, they're like, all right, here it is. Here's the specs for what it is, and this is how, the longevity of how long it'll last. With streaming, there is no, here's the specs. It's, well, all the specs are on our end, so you don't have to worry about it. So that opens the potential for games to be continually pushed at a faster rate to make better things. And it may not necessarily be that it's just simply better on a graphical scale, but on a processing scale, you can do things that weren't possible on a PS4 before, or that wasn't possible just a couple of years ago, because the technology wasn't really figured out yet. But now, games can do more. You could have bigger environments that are all loaded at the same time. That just, you can stand up on a mountain and just see this giant landscape, and that's all real. Like all stuff you can go walk into. There's no loading times to go over there. And it's not like hidden behind, well, there's that mountain over there, but technically that's just a backdrop. You can't actually go over there, type of stuff. Whereas, now you have the PS4, it's like, okay, and, they did drop the announcement of the PS Neo, but, the point is, this is the hardware you have. We can only push it to this point, and until the next one comes out, then we can start doing better. Whereas if consoles aren't in the picture anymore, and they're not relying on the hardware that everyone has in their home, and they're relying on the hardware that's streaming to everyone, then they could push it more and make better things at a quicker rate.
Well, all right, let me present this scenario for you. So, we get rid of physical consoles. They're no longer a thing. They're gone. How would you feel then? Because they're going to have to compensate. I mean, for the most part, console sales don't generally bring in any revenue for a while. So maybe companies like Sony, Nintendo, I mean, Nintendo probably would never get into streaming. They're as soon as Xbox and PlayStation start going into streaming, Nintendo's going to have at least 2 or 3 more consoles roll out before they catch on. But
Yeah.
regardless, say all the major players are in the game now. Everybody's streaming. They're going to want compensation for that. Because on the one hand, this made me think about how the one problem they have with charging less on the console stores themselves, because we just got Uncharted. It's a $60 game. So they could charge less than your brick and mortar stores by saying, we don't have to pay for disc development. We don't have to pay to ship. We don't have to pay for anybody to keep it in their store. We can actually cut this down to $40 and still make a profit on it. That sounds like a great thing. But what if they ended up going in the opposite direction where they said, now because there's no physical consoles, we have to make up the price difference because now we need servers. Now we need our own data banks here, and we need the technology that can stream out not just to like a few thousand, but to every single person who signed up for this particular thing. And we need to up the price. So maybe games start becoming $80, $100. I mean, would you feel okay with that?
On paper, no. But in reality, that's just the way things work. Everything in this world was more expensive than it was 10 years ago. So, and it's just gamers being, kind of whiny, saying, I don't want it to go above 60, but it's like, well, they used to be more than 60 back in the day. Now they're 60, and they've been 60 for a long time. And as years go on, as minimum wage goes up, that 60 becomes less and less. So it's
right.
You're affording it easier and easier. So, I mean, if 10 years ago you were fine with 60 and you could afford it with whatever you were making then, 10 years from now, if it goes to 70, if it's 80, it's still going to be the same. Just because the number's different, it really doesn't matter. But if we want games to get better and get pushed further and not just be, reskins of the same thing and these bare bone games all the time, then you have to be willing to put more money down. Because the sad fact is, if developers can't make money on it, they're not going to make a game. And they're going to look at it, and that's why you get all these Call of Duties that are basically the same game over and over and over again. When it's just like, we have these big teams working on these big budget titles. We need to make a profit. And, most companies are like, well, we don't want to just make a small profit, otherwise it's not worth it. We want to make a big profit. So how do we do that? Well, we cut back on the extra labor needed to make bigger and better new things. We cut back on, other areas that cost us money. If we can't get more than the $60 from you, well, then we need to make these games as cheap as possible for us to make, which usually means pretty bare and the same thing you've already played before.
And, you make a lot of really good points. And I can't say I disagree with you on any of them. It's just, I think for me, I think of certain games and think, $60 sounds like a good price point to it. For myself, I may have posted up on Twitter. I know I've said it before on the podcast. I bought the Libertalia edition of Uncharted 4. And for me, that was one of those situations where, it came with a few extra things. I was looking into some old Uncharted, like specialty editions, and thought, well, these old ones kind of came with more stuff. Like this one comes with a statue. The other ones came with statues, but then you also got like a belt buckle and his ring, and this one came with the statue and some stickers. And I was like, well, I think I'd much rather have his novelty ring. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't mind paying twice as much for this game because, and we'll get into this later, Uncharted 4 is an amazing game. And even if it was just the base game, this game is easily worth at least $80. So there's a lot of games that I wouldn't mind spending a premium for. But there's a lot of games too, like, well, Paragon, for example. I think I've spent $60 on that one. And I thought, well, I'll just consider it the price of a normal game. I got it, immediately regretted my decision. I didn't like it. I haven't played it ever since. I think I gave it maybe all in all less than an entire half an hour of gameplay because I couldn't stand it. The characters weren't comfortable. Because of that, like, none of the actions and the moves my character were taking were fun to me. And so the gameplay in and of itself was just garbage, in my opinion. And I know that's just me, I know, like yourself, you really like that game, but it's sometimes it's hit and miss like that. But if every single game was $80, then I mean, I guess it'd be no different than what you could say now. It's like, is every game that's priced at $60 worth $60? Maybe not, but maybe if everything's streaming and nothing's on disc, maybe that'll allow them to be more lenient with certain games. Maybe the Uncharted's of the future could be $80 because they know it's a premium game and they know they put more into it, and it doesn't have to be this standard set price all the time. And yet, like when Ratchet and Clank came out, they decided to price it at $40, so it was cheaper. So if they have the freedom to kind of go like, well, this is our budget, this is what we did, this is what we feel is fair for the game price, we don't have to put it at this set number, kind of like indie games. They could be $5, they could be $2, they could be upwards to $20 or $30 if they really want. So with that kind of freedom, that may not pose any problems, but I also feel like right now, just trying to think of issues that could come with a streaming service, we already have a problem now where it's become a Christmas tradition for somebody to hack the servers at Sony. Last winter, we had the same problem with Microsoft where they hacked those servers too, and Xbox fans were hugely disappointed because PlayStation fans are fairly used to Sony Network going down. Xbox fans are not. The live service is much better for their online, and so if everything's housed over there and you can't get to anything, I would be pretty mad. Especially if, I mean, you think of a kid getting games as a present. I mean, it's going to be probably a little weird because you're not unboxing a console anymore. But they say, we bought you this service. Here's, a few games we gave with it, and everything on their side is just down. So it's not even, well, at least I can plug in this game and play it offline. It's just no access whatsoever. And I already have several games like that, like The Crew and Destiny and The Division, which all require online gameplay. And so I have to fall back on, there are times where I don't have internet. At least I can plug in this.
There's ways to work around that, though. There could be an option where, like, let's just say you're playing on an app on your laptop or something, and you go to play a game and it's streaming it. You could pop down a little menu on the game and look at it, and it says, "Oh, your device is capable of playing the game on your own. Would you like to download it?" And then you just download it, and then so you have it on there. But then there's a different game where it's like, "Oh, your device isn't quite capable of handling this game. You're going to have to stream it."
See, I feel like before they reached a point where it was completely streaming free of any device, and maybe I'm more okay with this because it's kind of baby steps, but I feel like before we hit that point, we would hit a point where you would still get a console. It might even be the same size. Well, more than likely not, because it wouldn't have the same innards. But I think we would reach a point where a console would just be a streaming box.
Yeah.
I think eventually that box would be reformed and tightened up and running better, and eventually it'll just become something you can maybe even fit in your pocket if you really wanted to. I mean, they have memory extenders for PCs now that, they'll give you terabytes upon terabytes of data just in that alone, and it's tiny. Like I said, you could fit it in your pocket if you wanted. So I think we would hit a point where it would be something like that, where you could still, even though it's the app, in fact, it would probably be a lot like YouTube Red at this point, where even though YouTube is a streaming service, now they have YouTube Red, and for $10 a month you can, and I promise you they're not giving us any money to say this, but you can save videos to your phone and play them offline.
Mm-hmm.
So if it reached that point where it's like, here's your small device, it's mostly for streaming, but certain games do have the ability to download and play offline, I could see that being a much closer step to what we have now than just completely, here's the PlayStation app, buy it for $20 and it's on your TV. So I think they would have so much to figure out with that.
Yeah, it would take a lot of workaround, a lot of fine tuning, but it's definitely a possibility. I mean, and who knows, by the time 10 years from now, or whenever they're actually planning on this being a possible future, you might look at the technology that's available and just be like, oh yeah, totally, and that just makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you go back far enough, even the tech we have now, the thought of it would have sounded crazy. So, yeah, it's hard to judge until it's here. It's no different than like you mentioned the Neo earlier. It's hard to judge the PS 4.5 until we actually have it in our hands or they tell us why we need it.
Yeah, and it's just as every year goes by, it's not like technology gradually increases at a steady, flat rate. It's now it's a lot better than it was last year,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's a lot better than it was last year,
Mm-hmm.
and then it just keeps because it was, it's kind of like money. If you just put it in an account and it kept gaining interest on a certain amount, it's like at first it's slow growing, but once you got tens of thousands in there and you're gaining interest on that tens of thousands, and all of a sudden that bigger increase is huge.
Mm-hmm.
It starts becoming big and big and big, and then it snowballs.
Yeah. Well, only the future can decide. So we will definitely see what happens with that.
We'll see.
So let's get into a topic that I'm sure we agree on. We haven't discussed it much, but we both have been playing Uncharted 4. As of this morning, we actually happen to be at exactly the same spot in the game, coincidentally, which is chapter 16 in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And now, if you haven't played the game yet, or if you're playing through it and you haven't beaten it, obviously we haven't beaten our copies yet either. And so we don't know how it ends. We have no idea what's going to come up. Hopefully we'll get it beat by the end of this weekend. But this is a Uncharted 4 opinions, no spoiler section of the podcast. So we're not going to get into any details of where you go, who you meet, what's going on. No story details, just our straight opinions of the games and what we think about it. What? 7 hours in, easily? Probably more than that.
Maybe more. I don't know. Right around there, floating. Less than 10, I would say at least.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like I've been playing it for 10. It's hard for me to judge because I guess getting right into it, my opinion of it is this game is absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So I really feel like I've only put in 2 or 3 hours because time has just been flying by with this.
I really like it too, but I feel the hours, and it's not like I dread playing it at all. But I've kind of always felt this way about Uncharted in the past too, whereas the climbing sections are fun at first, but can get a little old when it's just like the same old, oh, I'm climbing on this rock and it broke. Crap. Now
Yeah.
I got to climb up here. I'm like, I get it. You're climbing on unstable stuff. I just want to get to the next point. But that's how this one is I just want to see what happens next in the story.
Right.
I just kind of want to fast forward through all this climbing on stuff.
Honestly, though, I have to say, to their credit, I've noticed that in this game, I've had a lot more of those, like, heart-stopping moments where things will happen, and it's the usual tropes of, like, oh man, he's in danger, but considering that this is the last Uncharted, I guess maybe I'm a little more on edge. Because you never know. That one last slip could be the last one. I mean, really, Nathan Drake owes his life to inanimate objects that are barely hanging on to the thing they were originally attached to.
Yeah.
He just always makes it by the skin of his teeth, and this game isn't different for that, but it's also such a beautiful world, and the mechanics work a lot better for me, and so I'm actually not against the climbing parts, and then the fact that I think they're even making fun of themselves, because there are times where you jump on something and it actually doesn't fall,
Mm-hmm.
and he'll make an offhanded comment like, oh, that's not what I expected.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they know that. The only mechanic that I really have to say, okay, well, actually not the only one. There's 2 of them. 2 mechanics in the game that I don't hate them, but it's not even so much an annoyance, just as much as like I have a thought, an opinion on them that isn't great. First of all, it really should have been titled Uncharted 4, A Thief Slides. Because he slides all the time. This is just like it's like almost around every corner you've got something you're sliding down, and you'll come up, you'll see something. It's like, all right, well, there's another slide again. I guess I'll be doing that on my way back out, or that's how I get through there. So there's a lot of sliding. The other thing is the rope mechanic. Really like the rope. Really enjoy it. I feel like it makes traversal different in a way that, you know, it's not, oh, I can see that thing I need to get to, and there's the very clear path of white and or yellow thing sticking out of the wall. It's, you know, you're running around looking for that, and then maybe an icon will eventually pop up saying like, oh, okay, you got to swing the rope. You have to get a little more creative.
Yeah. That's nicer. The rope, it feels good, and I like it. It doesn't. I haven't really ever gotten annoyed by it yet.
No.
It is kind of weird that now he just all of a sudden is doing it, even though he didn't do it in the past games. But that's whatever, I guess.
Yeah, and again, we can talk about this in a future episode, but the rope has some significance to him. But I don't know why they would be like, here, this rope means so much to you now. If it meant so much in your past, where was it in the last 3 games?
Yeah.
Like, did it really have to be something that was important? Couldn't it just be that, because this isn't a spoiler, but at one point during the, like, just different videos and stuff they were playing before the game had released, they had showed some gameplay of him getting this little spike, this little climbing spike, and why couldn't they have done the same?
Yeah.
You know,
same thing with the rope. It's like, it's not really a spoiler, but it's just, you know, they put the rope in the story to kind of explain, oh, this is why you have it now.
Right.
Whereas it could have just been, oh, hey, look, a rope, and I found it, and I can use that now.
Yeah.
And just introduce it as a mechanic later on, not introduce it from the beginning and be like, well, yeah, it's just been in his life all along. He likes using it.
Yeah, like it has any significance whatsoever, aside from, you could have just found it on a dead body. Yeah. Or maybe it was just a new tool that you decided to bring along on this one. You're getting older. Kind of makes sense, you know. Old man Drake needs a little help with getting around. Makes sense to me. But yeah, I mean, it was a couple weird tropes like that, but we're definitely more than halfway through the game at this point. How is this one holding up for you compared to the last 3?
I would have to say so far I like it the most out of all of them. And it's not necessarily a by far I like it the most, but it still is a good amount better than I would say than the last 3. I guess I'll have to see what happens at the end, but unless it just completely bombs at the end, which I haven't heard anything of that. So I imagine it's going to probably pick up and get better from what I've heard.
Well, that almost makes it sound a little negative, thinking that it's going to get quote unquote better.
Well, not like it's not good now, but like it's already good as far as the story goes. But like from what I've heard, it's like once you get to towards the end, it gets even better for the story.
Yeah. Okay. That clarification is good, because that's exactly how I feel about it too. Right now, is I'm amazed by this world and just how beautiful it looks, and how the transitions between gameplay and cutscene, how beautiful it looks. And there's obvious difference, and there are little tropes where you could be running around with somebody, and they basically took the mechanics from The Last of Us, because I remember Ellie she'd run across a door, enemies right there. I mean, I have it saved still on my PlayStation. It was a game clip that I recorded. She's just walking into the wall, just crouched down, walking straight into the wall and won't stop. And so I think they did the same thing here, because when you're with different people, then, they'll run across enemies and enemies won't do a thing. That's kind of...
The stealth is better now. That part's nice.
Yes.
Stealth is better, and I think what really makes a difference is now they have the mechanic where that little diamond comes up above an enemy's head, and it indicates if they see you or not. Because now you can actually know, oh, hey, it's safe to run across here or something because no one can see me.
Right. And I mean, if you haven't played the game yet, and you're unfamiliar with that. It's a little symbol that pops up above the enemies, and it'll gradually fill. And as it fills, you know that they're close to seeing you. Once it fills, it'll hit yellow. They'll become suspicious, but it can go from yellow to orange in the blink of an eye. And once it hits orange, that means that they've spotted you, they're going to shoot at you, and everybody else is alerted at that point. But yeah, the stealth works much better. I think the mechanics work much better. One of my biggest frustrations with the first three games was no matter how much I loved it, and I didn't mind the traversal, it would eventually get old because yeah, you're there mostly for the story when it comes to an Uncharted game. But the traversal was so obnoxious to me because I'm like, okay, jump right, and then he won't jump, and so eventually I just start spamming the button until he just like launches past it or drops or something stupid happens or he's just sitting there reaching for the next peg and he's just not grabbing it. I'm like, all right, you're pissing me off now. And that's actually another, I don't know that it's new. I remember thinking about it in the past games where if you're holding on to something and you start pressing a direction, he'll reach out. But when he reaches out, that's just more or less an indicator that he's ready to jump. And I thought, that thing is right underneath his hand. Why doesn't he just grab it? Why can't I just kind of scale the wall Spider-Man style? And I don't recall that being a thing that they had in the last game.
No, I don't. That's what I was thinking too. I think that's new. I mean, I could be wrong, but where he now is just, as long as it's within arm's reach, he can just grab it and move to the next.
Yeah, you don't have to jump
ledge
from each little hand position to the next, which is really nice. I like that. But I mean, so far the game is absolutely amazing. We're not game raters or anything, but really, honestly, it's one of those. I give it a 10 out of 10 because I mean, its gameplay is fun. The shooting mechanics have changed a little, and I find myself fighting habits I have from old games, like how you reload and aim and a lot of things like that, especially changing which shoulder you're viewing over, because your reload now is triangle, and in fact it's been so long since I played 2 and 3, it might just be an Uncharted 1 thing, but I'm replaying through Uncharted 1 and you reload your weapons with R1. You look over a different shoulder with the right analog stick. So they changed those, so reloading your weapon is triangle like in any other shooter, and then just to be able to change shoulders, you have to be looking down your sights and then press X. So it's taking a little bit of getting used to, but I really have zero complaints about the game so far, and I keep saying it, I'm almost heartbroken knowing that this is the last Uncharted, because I feel like even though the story is reaching that climax, I just feel like, man, they could put out another Uncharted on PS4 and I would be pretty happy with that. It's just we're so early in the PS4's life cycle still that it's just, I would rather see Uncharted go out with the end of a console.
Yeah, I can understand that. I don't know. Going back to what you were saying about the shooting, though, I have to say, across all of them, even with this one, I don't particularly like the shooting, and I think what it comes down to when I think about it is I just don't really like cover shooters that much. I think I like the mobility more that comes from other games where it's you move around constantly, whereas with cover shooters you just kind of pick your best spot and sit there until you're forced to be flushed out, and then you pick another spot and kind of hide behind it and then poke out and shoot whenever they're not really shooting at you. I don't know, I guess I just get bored of that pretty quickly, which is why I like how the stealth works better now, because there are sections that you can just completely skip over of the gunfights and just kind of walk around them, go to the next area, and just go right past them, which is nice. You don't even have to get into a gunfight. You can just keep going.
I've never successfully stealthed through any part in the first 3 Uncharted's.
Yeah.
And it drove me nuts that they're like, you don't have to engage. You can just sneak on by. I'm like, well, I tried that. And he fails every time. Somehow he gets seen, and that's what makes these new mechanics so nice in this game, is because, stealth is much, much better now. But I don't feel the same way about cover shooting, but I think it's mostly because on the one hand, I agree with you a lot. I do not like getting stuck in one area and then being forced to blind fire and then hope you knock out some of the entire army that you seem to be fighting against at the moment. And that to me is just not fun.
Yeah.
Because at that point, you're just stuck in a corner and you're trying to get out. But when you're in a situation where maybe there's enemies spread out on a map and they haven't quite made it to you, and I guess it's one of the reasons why you and I like Metal Gear for different reasons, is I actually really enjoy the gameplay, whereas you enjoy the story more. And I do enjoy the story, and I know you enjoy the gameplay, but what we focus on is just different because I like being able to hide, like being able to take out an enemy without them even knowing I was there. And if I can sneak around and stealth kill somebody or shoot down a couple enemies and they notice me and maybe they start running to that area, I can sneak around to a different piece of cover, get over there and hide, shoot them in the back. I just play it differently than allowing myself to get stuck. But the previous 3 Uncharted's really weren't. They didn't give you a lot of opportunity with that. It was pretty much hold up in one spot and then do a lot of blind firing. So this Uncharted for me was a big improvement because of that, because of the stealth and because I can maneuver around. And it's incredibly non-linear for a linear game because there are just all sorts of different paths that you can take that I believe most of them are just going to wind up in the same spot. But I just found myself going like, I don't know which way I want to go because I want to be able to explore, but I don't know which path is going to take me on the part that continues the story and which one takes me to find some treasure or takes me to a spot that maybe most people are never going to visit because they didn't traverse the same area I did.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they, like I said, they've done an amazing job.
Yeah, they've definitely done really good. Like, I think it was in the E3 demo they showed. I don't know if they told you where you were, so I guess I'll refrain from telling you where it was. But in the E3 demo, looks like a deserty type of area, tropical-ish, where it was they were driving the Jeep and you were trying to catch.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Was that E3?
I thought it was E3. Anyway, they've showed it.
I want to say it was PSX.
Maybe it was PSX.
Either
way, they showed it, and when you get to that area, like I think so far it's one of the coolest areas because of how like big and grand it looks when you get there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously it's not as big and grand as regular open world games, but when you get there, as compared to Uncharted's, they've never done anything like that before.
Right.
So now you can, I can go all these different ways. I can go completely over here, and it's just a dead end. But hey, look, I found a treasure or something over here. That's really cool. So like, just drive around, go to the different areas, and explore.
Well, and that's something else too, is actual driving. It's probably not a shock to anybody at this point, but they do have vehicles you can drive, and it's not just run up to any random vehicle and hop in and take it. There are designated driving spots in this game, but when you do, it feels really good. And so, I mean, I enjoyed that a lot. It was a new mechanic because before you would just kind of hop on the back, and there's a part that it's a usual Uncharted trope where you're on a vehicle being shot at. It's really not a spoiler because you're being shot at throughout the entire game. Let's face it, and it's survive and shoot down the other vehicles, but at the same time you can steal other vehicles at this point. And so for me, I was like, I don't want to ride on the back of this. Like, I've done that 3 games in a row now. I want to drive the car, and I want to drive it into other people. That's how I want to take out these enemies. I don't want to just stand on the back of a truck and shoot at enemies.
Yeah.
But, I mean, a lot of really good ideas. They change it up just enough to, I think it feels fresh, but it still feels familiar. And it makes me, on the one hand, makes me really look forward to The Last of Us 2, because you can tell that they've taken some tropes from The Last of Us, and it's definitely more of a darker tone than normal Uncharted's. But I actually really like I'm going to quote Greg Miller on this one, because he was always talking about how, in every game, Elena and Drake are on again, off again kind of thing. and we just want to see what happens with this kind of life and where does it go. And I thought it was really poignant that he said in one of their more recent podcasts that this is them stepping up. This is Naughty Dog saying, fine, you want to know what living the life of a treasure hunter is like? Here it is. And so there's obviously a lot more drama than we're used to, and it's not just necessarily happy-go-lucky. It's been the running joke that Nate is a mass murderer, and it never gets addressed. And I feel like even though nobody's holding up like a wanted poster for him in this game, at least not so far, it still feels like he has more of a conscience about it.
Yeah, and you feel like he's kind of recognized as not being necessarily the hero anymore. Like, yes, he's the hero of this game, but in general society, he is viewed as not a very good guy.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know about that, because it's not like you got general society.
No,
coming
well, no,
after you,
but like through the different interactions with characters that you interact with throughout
Yeah.
the story, it's very clear that people they know who you are. They view you. You're a thief. This is
Right.
what you do. You steal stuff.
Right. You're a treasure hunter. That's all there is to it. And there's obviously, it takes a certain kind of person to want to pursue this sort of life instead of just having a 9 to 5. And I feel like you feel some of that weight in this game, which is just, like I said, it's a welcome change of pace for the series. And I'm really curious to sort of change up what we're talking about here. We have new directors on this game, and I want to say their name is Neil and Bruce. I'll look that up.
No,
but
yeah. Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley or something like that.
yeah, I always struggle with like Bruce's name.
Yeah.
'Cause I remember Neil. His name seems to always come to the forefront. But anyway, so those two are the new directors for Uncharted 4. It was announced a while back that Amy Hennig was the director on the first 3 games, and then she was removed. As far as I know, we still don't know why. But I'm also really curious to see. The game was apparently very different under her direction, and so I really would love to see what Uncharted 4 was supposed to be like before these two stepped in, because this game is amazing.
Yeah.
But the last 3 were pretty amazing too, so I'm like, I really hate that idea of here she put years of her life into this series, and then we kicked her out, and it's like, I don't want to forget that she did a lot for the game too, but I don't know. I mean, could she have done better than what we have?
I would say no. Probably no. That's just with the general idea that once you have been working on something for a long time, you kind of get like a tunnel vision. And you're just like, well, this is what I've already established is good. Why would I deviate from what I know was already good and just keep kind of going down the same path I've been going? Whereas when you bring in new people, they have fresh eyes, a completely different look on it, and they're a little bit more willing to risk adding different ways to add new features. So it can change up what has been good to make something even better.
Yeah, I mean, fresh direction, like I've stated several times already, it's been nice. It's been very nice for this game so far. And so, I mean, falling into the same old tropes are nice for some reasons, but this change of pace has just been a good refreshment for the series, and for it to go out with a bang like this has been nice. And yeah, you're right. That tunnel vision with her could have led her to basically seeing this as like, well, and it's not to her discredit, but it could have been like, well, here's the story, and people are looking at it going, well, I mean, come on, this is the same thing we've done before, and maybe she wasn't willing to take as many risks, which I can't blame her. I mean, if this thing was like her baby, then she's like, look, guys, it sounds like a great idea. I'm not willing to do it, though. Not willing to take that risk, but oh well. I mean, we may never know, but now with the game out, maybe Naughty Dog will release what her idea is for the game.
Who knows? Honestly, back when they announced Uncharted 4, I was like, I was happy that it was coming out, but at the same time, I kind of would have liked something new. Now that it's out, I really like it, and it's really cool and it's fun. But back then, I still would have said, a new Naughty Dog trilogy would have been really cool too.
Well, I mean, there's a good chance that that's what they're going to do now.
Yeah, there's no saying that they're not going to go to do
Last
that
of
now.
Us 2.
I'm hoping for something else before Last of Us 2.
I don't know that I am. I mean, they've already done it. Like, this is how we got The Last of Us, was as people finished on Uncharted 3, they split off and started working on The Last of Us. So without a doubt, especially now that Uncharted 4 is done, people have been splitting off from this project for a while now. Without a doubt, they've probably already started working on The Last of Us 2. Mm-hmm. So chances are we're going to get that next. And then as people drop off from there, or they do what they need to do, they're more than likely already brainstorming ideas for a new series. But I think The Last of Us is going to be the thing that we see one more time. Now, I could be wrong, because Naughty Dog, of all companies, it's a little shocking that we got a proper fourth game.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, after Last of Us 2, we could be looking at an Uncharted kart racing.
That would be weird.
It would be...
But, I mean...
Naughty Dog.
Vehicles weren't even introduced into Jack until 2. And then, 3, they had more of the dune buggy things.
2, they had little floating cars.
Yeah.
That were really more like the size of a go-kart. So you can't even really call them cars.
You drove them.
And then,
but they weren't even the
cars.
same mechanics of the ones that you drove in Jack X.
Yeah, because they were like hover vehicles, whereas Jack X and then even Jack 3 were actual cars. So, as much as I hate to, we're going to have to wrap up the conversation on Uncharted 4 because we're at 57 minutes now and going against our promise of shorter podcasts. I really thought the streaming conversation wouldn't take as long as it did. So, we're going to get right into the worth mentioning segment, and because we were just talking about Uncharted, this would be a good time to announce too that what we would like to do is after we finish the games, we would like to have an episode that's dedicated solely to Uncharted 4, and we can get into more detail. And if you're listening to this and you have any comments and you want us to talk about your thoughts or write in, we'll take emails or tweets or anything like that, and we'll post your comments up here too. We'll discuss it, or any questions you might have, and we'll just do that as a separate episode too. And we'll make sure to clearly label it that it has spoilers, and we'll get into all the fine little details of this amazing game. The other thing I have on this list was that if you're a Pokemon fan, they did announce the release date of Sun and Moon, and I know that I'm a big fan of Pokemon, and I'm looking forward to that. The release date is this year. It comes out November 18th for the US and for Japan, and if you're in Europe, we're sorry, but you can have to wait an extra 5 days because it comes out on November 23rd for you guys.
Sad.
If you haven't seen them, they've released the cover art and the starters. So on the cover art, you can see the 2 legendary Pokemon. One looks like a big white lion, and the other one kind of looks like a very crescent moon-shaped bat. And then the starters you'll just have to see for yourselves when you Google that. Other than that, I had one other thing I wanted to mention before wrapping this up, which was that a nice young man I met on Twitter a while back, I started following him, and he goes by, the account name is at Freedom War 5. Basically, it's just like a nice community for anybody who plays Freedom Wars on the Vita and gets together. Basically, he helps build a community for online play, multiplayer, probably, if you're wanting to get trophies in that, or just level up or beat the game, because I know it's fairly difficult to beat the game if you don't have other people to help you.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up following that, about, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks into me following him, he had a little competition where he was giving away the soundtrack to Freedom Wars, and I thought, yeah, sure, why not? I'll retweet this tweet of his, and I ended up winning, which was shocking. And so he was supposed to send me a physical copy of the soundtrack, and because I believe he is over Britain, England, something like that, he's not in the United States, and so there was trouble sending it over. And he got back to me about a couple months ago, said that he wanted to know if I ever got it. I said no, so he emailed me a digital copy, and I wanted to give him a shout out because I was supposed to take a picture of the soundtrack and tweet it out myself, and I told him that I would do this instead. So if you're a fan of that game, I know I'm a big fan. It's a fantastic AAA game on the Vita. Look him up. He's Freedom War 5. Clever with the S there. You'll find a nice community of people to follow and befriend down there. So, without further ado, we want to give a shout out to TechnoAxe again for our intro. And remember that you can find us on your podcast app of choice. Pretty much everywhere: SoundCloud, iTunes, Podcast Republic, and Google Play. We're going to look into Spotify soon too, because that sounds like a cool place to go to. Other than that, go to our website, game-break.com, and don't forget that dash, and you'll find links to our YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram pages. Otherwise, you can hit us up on Twitter. I'm at Cobra_571. Daniel is at Dan_GameBreak, one word, no dash. And our official page on Twitter is GB_podcast. Just think of the old Game Boys. And as usual, thank you so much for tuning in. We can't express how much it means to us. And until next week, let's get back to playing some games.